Okay, Sergeant, start your recording.
Put into the computer in progress.
Recording to the cloud, all set. Good morning and welcome to the remote hearing on education. Will council members and staff please turn on a video at this time? Thank you. To minimize disruptions, please place your cell phones electronic to vibrate. To send testimony, you may send testimony to testimony@council.nyc.gov. Once again, that's testimony@council.nyc.gov. Chair Traeger, we are ready to begin.
Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to today's virtual education hearing. I'm Councilmember Mark Traeger, Chair of the Education Committee. This hearing represents my last as Chair of this committee as we conclude the 2018-2021 legislative session. I am proud of the legacy we leave behind. During this time, this committee has vigorously met its oversight mandate over the Department of Education, both in person and virtually. This committee has held hearings on a wide range of topics, including adult literacy, diversity, and school integration, students with disabilities, social emotional learning, class size, teacher preparation, students in juvenile detention, students in temporary housing, accessibility in our schools, and all things COVID-related, to name a few. We have been fair to the DOE and given credit where credit is due, but we never hesitated to call out issues needing redress by the department and the administration. In some areas, we now have greater transparency and have closed some gaps. In other areas, there still remains much to do. Soon, this city will have a new mayor, chancellor, and council, with more than 30 new members joining the body. I hope the new education chair builds on the legacy we have built, to continue to build on the gains and to continue to highlight those areas in need of more resources, time, attention, and focus. Today's hearing focuses on the impact of the pandemic on arts instruction, extracurricular and school-related social activities, and it is fitting we end our long run on this topic. Each play their part in contributing to a well-rounded student. Each play their part in creating more engaged students. Each play their part in increasing academic learning and mitigating COVID-related learning loss. Bottom line, arts instruction, extracurricular, and school-related social activities all play their part in helping students become capable individuals, sharpen critical skills, and enhance the overall school experience. The COVID-19 impact on these is real and must be addressed through next year's budget and made a priority by the next administration. And I also want to say that, there's a real equity issue here as well. One of the many reasons why I sponsored the bill and passed it on the PTA fundraising bill was to highlight the deep inequities in our city, where certain zip codes, certain school communities can raise $1 million or more. That enhances extracurricular options and opportunities for kids, while other zip codes have to rely on a GoFundMe page for basic supplies. And those children cannot have those same opportunities as they do in wealthier zip codes. So they rely on us, the government, to really level the playing field to ensure that there's equity, opportunity for all kids, regardless of what zip code they're from. And as a former teacher, I know personally the impact of the arts in instruction. Those of you who know the story of Anthony Ramos, he came from the school where I taught, where arts and theater basically saved him and catapulted him into the phenomenal career that he's experiencing right now. It was his theater teacher that really inspired him and opened doors. We need to ensure that every kid from every zip code has those same opportunities. That's really critical here. So I want to thank everyone from the DOE who is testifying today, in addition to our public witness who are here today to contribute to this conversation about the importance of arts education, especially during this pandemic. I want to thank the council staff for all the work they put into today's hearing. Malcolm Budahorn Jan Atwell, Chelsea Badermore, Macy's Sarkisian, and Frank Perez. I also want to thank my own staff, great staff, Anna Scaife, Vanessa Ogle, Maria Henderson, Janine Carachetti. I also want to recognize prior committee staff that have had an impactful and lasting legacy on the work we've done. Councils Smita Deshmukh and Beth Golu, policy analyst Kalima Johnson and Aaliyah Reynolds, and financial analysts Elizabeth Hoffman and Caitlin O'Hagan. I want to acknowledge the work of central staffers Johanna Castro and Michelle Otis, who have been spearheading the monumental task of taking this council remote and ensuring that we have been able to continue our legislative and oversight functions in this new Zoom world. Finally, I want to also thank the fantastic sergeants at arms. Whether in person or remote, they have always ensured the smooth and safe running of committee hearings, and for that, we are forever grateful. And just another plug for the outstanding staff, both my staff in my office and the wonderful staff of this committee. I am nothing without staff. This committee is nothing without staff. We have the best. We have the best. Prepared for every hearing, oversight, follow-up. After hearings, we fight on individual cases to help kids and families get the results which they rightfully deserve. I'm very grateful to the City Council staff, so I want to thank you all very much. But we have a lot more work to do. So I would now turn it over to Malcolm Budahorn. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Traeger. And just for the record, we want to acknowledge that we've been joined by council members Barron, Borelli, Brannan, Kalos, Miller, and Riley. Good morning, everyone. My name is Malcolm Budahorn, counsel to the Education Committee. Before we begin testimony, I just want to remind everyone that you will be on mute until you are called on to testify. After you are called on, a member of our staff will unmute you and Zoom will prompt you to accept the unmute. I will be calling on public witnesses to testify in panels after the conclusion of the administration's testimony and council member questions. So please listen for your name to be called. Council members who have questions should use the raise hand function in Zoom. You will be called on in the order with which you raised your hand after the full panel has completed testimony. We will be limiting council member questions to 5 minutes. For public panelists, please listen for the Sergeant at Arms to give you the go-ahead to begin your testimony. All public testimony will be limited to 2 minutes. We ask that you also submit your full written testimony to testimony@council.nyc.gov. It will be accepted for up to 72 hours following the close of this hearing. We will now call on the following members of the administration to testify: Lawrence Pendergast, Deputy Chief Academic Officer for Teaching and Learning; Maria Palma, Executive Director of Arts and Special Projects; Seth Schoenfeld, Senior Executive Director, Public Schools Athletic League; Catherine Jetterlinick, Chief of Staff; and Trenton Price, Director of Operations, Office of Arts and Special Projects. I will first read the oath, and after I will call on each of you individually to respond. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee, and to respond honestly to council member questions? Lawrence Pendergast?
Yes.
Maria Palma?
Yes.
Seth Schoenfeld?
Yes.
Catherine Jedlinek?
Yes.
And Trenton Price?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Pendergast, whenever you are ready to begin.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Traeger, and all the members of the Education Committee here today. I'm Lawrence Pendergast, Deputy Chief Academic Officer for Teaching and Learning at the New York City Department of Education. I'm joined today by Maria Palma, Executive Director of the Arts and Special Projects, and other DOE colleagues. We're honored to be with you all today to discuss the important topic of arts education and extracurricular activities in New York City public schools. This administration is committed to providing all students with rigorous, robust, culturally responsive instruction with a full complement of course offerings that include arts education. The arts, including dance, moving image, music, theater, and visual arts, are essential elements of our students' learning experience. Arts education provides powerful opportunities for our youth to explore and express themselves, explore their creative voices, cooperate, concentrate, problem solve, and other crucial personal and interpersonal life skills that prepare students for their careers and life ahead. in society. Perhaps most importantly, in coping with the pandemic, the arts play an important role in nurturing students' social and emotional well-being and connecting the students to ensembles and other communities of peers. We're grateful to the City Council for its support of our schools and students, as well as your advocacy for the importance of arts education. And Chair Traeger, we are very familiar with your support for schools in your district. And so moving aside from the testimony for one moment, I do want to say thank you on this. In this last year, and you really do need to be acknowledged for your support for the arts. We notice and we appreciate it. Since the start of this administration, we prioritized equitable arts education for all of New York City students. The DOE's Office of Arts and Special Projects within DOE's Division of Teaching and Learning works tirelessly with our arts content directors and borough-based staff to maximize supports for students and schools. The Arts Office supports citywide content, standards, and professional learning and student programming. The Borough Arts Directors and Coordinators also work with schools and provides customized supports to superintendents and school leaders to help bolster the quality of all arts programming. Beginning in 2014, we launched a $23 million citywide arts education initiative. With the additional annual investment, the Office of Arts and Special Projects was able to expand many successful programs to increase learning opportunities in the arts and foster more equity in access to the arts. The cornerstone of quality arts education is found in the robust combination of certified arts teachers, instructional resources, dedicated art spaces, and partnerships. Here are some of the most effective ways that we've deepened opportunities for arts education across the city. When it comes to certified arts teachers, as with all academic content, certified teachers are key to student success and the anchor for arts education in any school. The Arts Matter initiative, launched in 2014, has supported over 120 schools in our city's highest needs neighborhoods, which previously had only limited access to arts education, by hiring more than 100 new certified arts teachers and building arts programs. Overall, from 2014 to 2020, New York City has hired an additional 373 certified arts teachers who have been absolutely critical in enabling us to expand arts education across the city. When it comes to the art space grants, materials, and studios, grants for our art space program, which stands for Supporting Performing Arts and Creative Education, has provided 482 schools with auditorium renovations, new sprung floor dance studios, stage curtains, audio and visual equipment, visual arts materials, choral risers, music stands, band shells, black box theaters, and ballet bars. In addition, our annual art student funding, also launched in 2014, provides money to eligible arts teachers to purchase student art making resources and equipment. That includes instruments, culturally responsive arts materials, dance shoes, costumes, and stage equipment, as well as remote learning resources like online music software. Our wildly popular arts partnership grants allocate millions of dollars to schools each year, enabling them to partner with arts and cultural organizations that provide direct services for students with disabilities, multilingual learners, and families. The resources and expertise of these organizations have done much for our students. And just last week, the Office of Arts and Special Projects announced this year's Arts Partnerships Grants, which will enable 223 schools across the 5 boroughs to partner with 80 different arts and cultural vendors. And that number includes 26 projects in District 75 schools. To strengthen instruction, the Office of Arts and Special Projects expanded support for arts teachers and leaders with more than 200 professional learning opportunities, serving over 2,000 arts educators each year, including robust instructional resources, content-based professional development, new teacher workshops, teacher professional learning communities to sustain effective teaching practice, resources and professional development for educating students with disabilities and multilingual learners in arts classrooms. Pre-K, and kindergarten arts learning through CREATE, a collaboration between the Office of Arts and Special Projects and the DOE Division of Early Childhood Education, 4 leading arts organizations with expertise in the early learning arts. CREATE was made possible with generous support from Jody and John Arnold, the New York Community Trust, and Agnes Gund. Our office's professional development offerings gained national attention when the office was selected as the recipient of a 4-year federal grant for professional development for arts education that focused on blended hybrid professional development. This award proved especially timely when the pandemic necessitated a pivot to remote learning. Along with the National Arts Education Association, that office has just been awarded a new 5-year grant to lead professional development, focusing on equity, diversity, and inclusion, and social emotional learning in arts classrooms. With regard to the impact of COVID, of course, the global spread of COVID-19 in March 2020 created enormous challenges for our arts education efforts, both fiscally and operationally. Despite the challenges, arts teachers managed to do what they do best. They create, innovate, and students continue to learn. Despite the monumental challenges of remote instruction, arts teachers engage New York City students in dance, media, music, theater, and visual arts from their living rooms on Zoom. For a glimpse into what remote arts learning looked like over the past year and a half, we would love it if you could take a look at this short video.
Okay, bear with me 1 second.
Malcolm, is there a way to fix the sound and get this?
You can't hear the sound.
Okay. Although I am, it's looking great. So
No. Okay. It looks like, could you hear it, Chair? No? No. Okay, so Larry, we'll go back to your testimony and
Yeah, that's fine.
I will try to figure out what happened. Maybe we can play it at the end of your testimony before questions. So I'll do a little texting while you continue.
And if not, we'll send the members the link because it is tremendous video and it celebrates our kids and teachers. So first of all, just thank you for trying to make it happen. We appreciate it and hopefully we can get it for them soon. In the summer of 2020, the Office of Arts and Special Projects provided guidance to schools about instructional practices for in-person arts learning. And throughout the pandemic, we have followed all the latest guidance from the CDC, including social distancing, individualized art materials, bins, masks, and prioritized instruction that presented less physical risk, such as music literacy or dance criticism. These precautions proved safe and successful, and we are thrilled that we were further able to restore in-person band this year with the proper PPE, distancing, and ventilation. The Office of Arts and Special Projects supported teachers throughout the pandemic with online professional learning communities, weekly office hours, on-demand support, technology assistance for remote learning, and leadership assistance. Weekly instructional resources for teachers were posted on Teach Hub for dance, music, theater, visual arts, and media as they transition to remote and blended teaching. Videotapes of performances and catalogs of student artwork were put online and celebrated virtually. New initiatives such as the Songwriters of Tomorrow Scholarship were initiated during the pandemic. Examples of student artistic work and achievements during remote and blended learning can be found on the DOE's website. In the spring of 2021, in collaboration with the Department of Cultural Affairs, the Office of Arts and Special Projects launched a grant program to expand arts programming for students and partner with artists during the Summer Rising program. Artists engaged students in the creation of incredible murals and innovative outdoor pop-up performances. And these grants were catalysts for students and community engagement and provided a vital outlet for students to process their experiences from last year through creative expression. As a result of the pandemic, the New York State Education Department arts learning standards were waived last school year. As we look to the full return of students this year, it is our blueprints for the teaching and learning in the arts, along with the New York State Education Department arts learning standards, that continue to guide the department and our teachers with a path to follow for developing culturally responsive curricula in all arts disciplines. They convey benchmarks for what children should know, understand, and be able to do in dance, moving image, music, theater, and visual arts. In addition, they provide school administrators with the tools they need to share students' accomplishments in these areas with parents. New York State instructional guidelines and requirements for the arts provide the baseline for our arts count measurements. At the elementary school level, the state commissioner's regulations state that every student in every grade should receive annual instruction in all 4 major branches of the arts: music, theater, dance, and visual arts. They also recommend that 20% of instructional time be devoted to the arts in grades 1 through 3 and 10% in grades 4 to 6. While we fully support these recommendations, we also recognize that they are demanding, and we have deepened our efforts to support more schools successfully meeting them. At the middle school level, the state requires 1 semester each of music and visual arts instruction to be provided by a licensed arts teacher over the course of 7th and 8th grades. Theater and dance instruction do not fulfill these requirements. For high school students, the state requires completion of 2 semesters of study in any art form. We've made significant strides toward meeting this guidance and these requirements throughout the administration. Having all of our students back in person with additional and significant investments in the arts goes a long way towards enhancing this work. With the return of full-time in-person learning this fall, arts teachers welcome back students to the performing and visual arts classrooms. Our preliminary data shows the vast majority of arts teachers are again teaching the arts. And we have seen a significant rebound from last year in both the number of teachers and variety of instruction offered. Schools are returning to their dedicated art spaces where possible, providing students with the opportunity to again create and rehearse together in shared settings. Schools and educators are following DOE guidance, and as a further precaution, extracurricular arts activities such as school musicals and after-school marching bands require students to be vaccinated. To support our students' academic recovery in the arts, the DOE proudly dedicated 20% of the $350 million academic recovery funding to arts education for this school year. That is the single largest investment in arts education in New York City history. This funding was allocated progressively, weighing community needs and COVID impacts so that more funds support schools and communities hit hardest in the last year and a half. Schools can spend this critical funding on after-school and weekend student arts programs, arts education, direct student services, and residencies from arts and cultural organizations, professional development for teachers in arts education, part-time certified arts teachers to enhance arts course offerings, and art-making materials and equipment, including instruments. One example being the Central grant we have that is currently accepting applications to supply additional music instruments to schools and students that need them. The federal stimulus funding has also allowed the DOE to fully restore investments in the citywide arts education and advancement budget, and that will enable the restoration of student programs, teacher and leader professional development, and individual school funding, including partnership grants. The Office of Arts and Special Projects continues to lead professional development for arts teachers and school leaders in the targeted and strategic use of ARPA funds to support academic recovery student social emotional well-being, culturally responsive instruction, and re-engaging parents and mixed school community. In addition, with the fully realized investment bringing schools per capita fair student funding to 100%, schools have increased funding to hire full-time certified arts teachers. Our preliminary data show 2,766 certified arts teachers in New York City schools in the 2021 school year. We're proud of this once-in-a-generation investment that Chancellor Porter made possible towards equitable arts education across our city, and we are enormously grateful to all of our arts educators and school leaders for leading this work with our arts students. I want to take a moment to acknowledge that these successes are built upon the foundation of the remarkable accomplishments of our friend and colleague, Paul King, who brilliantly led the Office of Arts and Special Projects for 11 years before his passing in February of 2020. He was a tireless and effective advocate for students' arts education. In addition to our core curriculum, we recognize the importance of extracurricular activities, and our academic recovery plan advances our goal of serving the whole child. We've given dedicated funding for expansions in sports and community schools. In addition, with fair student funding being fully funded, schools finally have the funding they deserve and the discretion to use that towards supporting students and the extracurricular activities that interest each school community. In looking towards the future, the arts and arts education are essential to New York's economic recovery, and we mean essential. According to a 2019 Controller report, the creative economy, quote, the creative sector accounts for 13% of the city's total economic output. In total, 1 out of every $8 of economic activity in New York City, that's $110 billion in 2017, can be traced directly or indirectly to the arts sector. The arts are also, end quote, the arts are also a robust career pathway for the New York City students, as well as a generator for lifelong skills that enable them to thrive and gain enjoyment through their childhood. Our arts strategic plan, which was developed over the course of a year with feedback from diverse stakeholders, including parents, students, teachers, school leaders, and representatives from higher education institutions and arts and cultural organizations, provides a forward-facing blueprint for fully realizing equitable access to a high-quality and sequential arts education. It underscores the centrality of increased hiring of certified arts teachers, who are the cornerstone of high-quality arts education for all of our students. Thoughtful investment in school partnerships with local art and cultural organizations are also essential, and we're already taking steps to put pieces of this plan in motion, which must be coupled with dedicated funding to ensure that a quality arts education is a reality for all students from pre-K through 12th grade. I thank you for the opportunity to offer this testimony, and I look forward to answering any questions that you may have.
I think I figured out how to do it. Thank you, Google. So just give me 1 second. I will try this one more time. And Chair, if you can't hear it, just pipe in right away and let me know.
1, 2,
Okay.
ready, and breathe.
Oh, I'm so sick of all these animals staying in during quarantine.
Hope inside of you, let it shine through.
Do bees make honey in May? Maybe.
Welcome to Dancing with the Doctor.
Be prepared for a sensation.
good teacher.
Whatever landscape you'd like to create, go for it. So have fun, and I can't wait to see what you create.
Senator, you are not listening to me.
We can't do this. It's that simple. I don't understand why we're still discussing.
We're discussing this because it's the only option. Just look at what's happening.
Listen, Stanton. Quiet, all of you. We're not getting anywhere here.
That was really good. Back to you, Chair.
I have to tell you, Malcolm, that, and folks watching, in addition to my coffee this morning, I needed this morning. This was awesome. So big virtual round of applause for the amazing, extraordinary kids, students of our school system, and their educators, and all the organizations, and everyone that really helped make that possible. That was really great. Of course, I love that scene with the senators. That's what we want our kids to become our leaders. That's wonderful. Really, really great, powerful stuff. And now the task before us is how do we ensure that these opportunities are equitable and across the entire city, across every zip code. That's the work before us. So I will get right into questioning. Malcolm, any additional members have joined us before I begin?
Council members Felix, Gennaro, Rose, and Lewis.
Great. Thank you, Malcolm. So I'll begin. Inadequate funding for arts education is a chronic problem that seems to have worsened in the past few years. In response to the fiscal uncertainty brought on by the pandemic, $470.1 million was cut from DOE's fiscal 2021 budget, including a $15.5 million cut to middle and high school arts contracts that was not restored in the fiscal 2022 budget. And while arts supplemental funding through Fair Student Funding totaled $67.76 million in fiscal 20, that allocation has decreased to $65.35 million in fiscal year 2022. Can you give us the total amount of centrally allocated funding for arts education for fiscal year 2022?
Right, it's the funding that makes it happen. It's essential to make the arts happen in our schools. And we really are proud of the $70 million that was made available. And of the $350 million academic recovery funding that went to schools as part of their academic recovery SAM this year, we were able to have $70 million carved out and dedicated specifically to the arts in schools. Not only do we believe the arts are essential, but we believe that means we have to fund them if they are essential. So that's 20% of schools' allocations. With regard to the 15.5 million that had been cut, and you're correct, it was cut to the Office of Arts and Special Projects. We advocated to have it restored, and it was. And again, that was cut when the city was, as you are aware, in a severe fiscal crisis, and there was a desire to try and minimize any impact on schools. And so the Central Office of Arts and Special Projects budget was cut. However, a lot of that money goes through us and goes directly to schools. So we advocated strongly for its reinstatement, and we're proud to say it was. Also, bringing the per capita Fair Student Funding to 100% this year. The schools have increased funding to hire full-time certified arts teachers, and we are seeing they're making the effort to do so.
Yes. It was it's difficult to relive what the budget situation was a short time ago. And We also were fighting very hard to save educator positions when many were on the verge of being lost. So I'm well aware, but now it makes it that much more important that we're using the added resources from Washington and Albany the right way. So can you provide a breakdown of any federal pandemic-related funding that has been allocated to arts instruction?
Again, I would say that the stimulus funding, the ARPA funding, that's $70 million. That's 1 in every $5 that was allocated directly to schools. There's a requirement that the schools spend it on the arts. It's a belief that it's essential to kids' recovery and their social emotional wellness. And we've never had anything like that before. We really are grateful to Chancellor Porter for making sure that that money happened for our schools. And that is entirely federal money that came through. And I'm going to defer to Trenton and Maria, our Executive Director of the Office of Arts and Special Projects and our Senior Director of that office, to add any additional information.
Thank you, Larry, and thank you, Chair Traeger, for your support along with your colleagues. It has meant so much to us and to our schools and to our students. I think that when Larry talks about the $70 million, again, as somebody that has labored in the field of arts education for many, many years, I cannot begin to tell you how absolutely seismic and historic this investment has been. And it has really put us back on track and allowed school leaders to put programs back on track in individual schools. So I think that's really very, very important to note, and not only to put them back on track, but also to begin to grow them, which is what we want to be able to accomplish in order to meet our goals around equity and universal access to a quality arts education for all of our students. The $70 million investment is going to go directly toward student programs, towards materials and resources, toward the hiring of part-time and F-status teachers, toward professional learning for arts educators, for programs that may happen outside of school per session costs. There are many students that do participate in after-school activities, whether it be a play or a chorus, so it'll cover that, as well as rehearsals and practices. The wonderful performances that you saw in that video, which are really just a little snapshot of the incredible creativity and talent of our students citywide, and the dedicated arts teachers who have worked so hard, and committed school leaders who have really ensured that this happens in schools on behalf of their students. Trenton, is there anything else you want to add? I mean, I think it's also important to remember that there are other resources that are put together strategically in order to meet our ends and goals around serving our students and ensuring them a full complement of arts education. So, for example, I know that the City Council contributes significant funding in terms of the CASA grants. Also, we were very blessed and fortunate this year in the City Artist Corps and Commissioner Casal, who granted $6.5 million towards Summer Rising sites for mural and pop-up arts performances. And that was really, really a catalyst toward bringing our students back to in-person learning. And I think really a very good example of what the partnership of interagency offices in the government, as well as legislative council and the administration can do when we put our heads and hearts together to work on behalf of our students. Trenton, is there anything else we want to add in terms of budget points?
I'll just add one detail, and that is, as Larry mentioned in the testimony, that the $70 million of ARPA funding, in addition to the after-school programs Maria mentioned, and per session, and direct student services and part-time teachers, is also an investment and able to be spent on materials, resources, and equipment for student arts making, which is a really sizable investment in ensuring, for example, band programs can safely reopen with the number of instruments needed to do so.
So just to kind of follow up on that, and I appreciate the answers. Do you have a sense that this federal funding is sort of trying to build back or to kind of reinforce support arts programs that were pre-existing in certain schools prior to the pandemic, rather than talking about a dramatic expansion of arts programs and the hiring of licensed art teachers to more schools? Are we kind of building back and reinforcing programs that were impacted in certain schools that had existing programs prior to the pandemic? Or are we talking about a dramatic expansion of new programs to new schools across the city, particularly in under-resourced communities?
So the funding is primarily about academic recovery for our kids, and this recovery for our city. It's the driving force. When we put together the allocation, the school allocation memo, and we weighted the formulas, we weighted the distribution so that schools that were hardest hit, neighborhoods that were hardest hit, populations that were hardest hit by the pandemic would receive more and equitable funding, match their challenges. How the schools are using it, and they do have flexibility, as we indicated in our testimony. They can increase core instruction to students. They can purchase instruments. They can hire arts partners who work with vendors. That is ongoing, and I again defer to Maria as to ways schools are approaching the use of the funding.
Oh, thank you, Larry. Absolutely accurate and correct. And I would like to add that we value and respect the ability of our school leaders to make those decisions that are best suited and responsive to their students and their school communities. So we support those decisions. The Arts Office has been working very, very actively to provide the best possible guidance and support as school leaders make those decisions. And I believe that in part, Chair Traeger, school leaders are doing both. I think that they're maintaining and bringing back those programs that may have been diminished a little bit during the COVID and during the pandemic, as well as taking the opportunity to grow and expand. So the ARPA funding, the academic recovery funding, this again, historic, all caps, boldface, big headline, is not only being able to do that, but let's remember, as Larry mentioned, fair student funding has been raised. And I know that the council worked very hard to bring those resources back to our schools. Those funds, school leaders may be able to make full-time hires. And we are getting inquiries, and our borough arts directors work one-on-one with school leaders in making those decisions, in supporting them, and seeing where they need to grow and expand their arts programs in order to provide greater equity for all students in all of the art forms at the elementary level and according to state requirements at the middle and high school levels. Right. We've worked to be very specific in helping school leaders. We've created a one-stop shopping, so to speak, set of resources and links to help school leaders around understanding what the budget and the funds could be used for, the hiring, professional learning opportunities, a full complement of suite of really anything you might need to know or have to do in order to grow your arts program. And again, the Arts Office and our borough arts directors and everyone are available to provide direct and ongoing support for school leaders and our arts teachers. This is so very, very, very important.
No, I appreciate those answers. It's just, I'm familiar with fair student funding. We fought very hard to get it to 100% for every school. It's just that fair student funding is tied to enrollment. And in some cases, enrollment has been impacted in some of our school communities. It's also tied to the average teacher salary. So if a school, and we want to retain our seasoned veteran teachers, that's a good thing for school communities. But as the salaries go up, so does the cost in terms of fair student funding. So in order to keep those teachers, they have to pay them, they have the fair student funding gets, eaten up a little bit more. So that's why in my old high school, when we were able to get them a increase a couple of years ago in fair student funding, it was mainly used just to retain the teachers that they already had. They were not really able to hire that much more, although now we do have some more resources. And I'm interested in knowing, because what I hear anecdotally, and that's why I'd like to get some kind of more factual empirical data, is that in some cases, the city council CASA grants are the only arts program a school might have. And if folks have a different answer or a different picture on that, please let me know, because I'll phrase it this way, besides centrally allocated funding for arts education, schools can receive grants for arts programming from a variety of sources, including cultural after-school adventure CASA funding from the city council, support from PTA fundraising and other funding sources. The differential funds that schools receive for the arts inevitably leads to disparities in program offerings. What is DOE doing to address inequities in arts program offerings among schools?
Okay, again, addressing the inequities, it's with the $70 million, we did try to make sure that, we made sure that funding the schools was distributed on an equitable basis by building in weights that took into account needs and those hardest hit by the pandemic. There are other ways as well, and Trenton and Maria, I know you have notes on this, but we, through the Office of Arts and Special Projects, the programs are designed to help support those schools that struggle with, sometimes struggle with meeting their arts requirements, and our borough arts directors prioritize those schools that have fewer resources. But Maria?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to note, Chair, and we take to heart the fact that we want each and every school and each and every student to be able to have what really is their birthright in terms of a robust arts education.
That's right.
I think that we, particularly just going back to the academic recovery money for a moment, even though the schools may not, just because of the federal guidelines, hire a full-time arts teacher with that, they are able to strengthen and expand and grow their arts partnerships. Our cultural partners are really an integral part of our plan to provide a quality arts education. They work very closely with our school leaders and our school communities. They are an important part of the school community. And it also is important because there are opportunities for arts partners, both large and small, in every zip code, to be part of the life of a school and of students in that community. So those funds could very clearly be used to grow existing arts instruction. And again, just going back to the idea of the certified teacher, it's so important to have that certified arts teacher in the school because they are the anchor for arts education. But in terms of addressing the equity issue, just a few things that I want to call to mind. First of all, we do produce over the last decade an annual Arts in Schools report. We have a survey. We have aggregated and disaggregated data, which is made available to the City Council as per Local Law 123 every February. We use that data and work closely with the Office of Compliance in analyzing it and focusing and targeting supports around those schools that may need that, just to address exactly, Chair, what you're talking about. In addition, every school has an individual arts report that's on their website, that's public facing, that becomes an opportunity, quite honestly, for even funders or arts partnerships to identify those areas that might be in need of additional supports. So thereby we're able to kind of drop in some extra supports to address some of those inequities. We're also working on so many programs, and I don't want to be tedious around this, but there's so many aspects of addressing the needs of our students that we're attempting to address. We're working on the certified arts teacher front. We've worked in District 31 this past several years around a pilot program to earn supplemental certification in the arts for cluster teachers that were not certified, which we think is a really, really extremely important initiative that we would love to have support going forward to bring to every borough. In addition, Larry mentioned the Arts Matter initiative, which addressed the problem and the gaps in our middle schools, because of course those are promotional requirements and very important. We've also, in terms of addressing the equity issue, we've developed a middle school arts audition boot camp for Title I students to enable them to be prepared to audition for seats at audition high schools. That has been hugely successful. The placement rate has been over 90% of students who participated in that in terms of access. I think too, it's important to recognize the important role that our funders and philanthropists play in helping to catalyze those areas that can help us to think about further strategies in order to bring us closer to that equity goalpost. I would like to call out also the Jody and John Arnhold Foundation and all of their extraordinary commitment to arts education in our city, among other funders such as the Paul Simon Family Foundation, Schubert Foundation, the Miller Foundation, and Studio in a School. The Arnhold is an excellent example because it really is a pre-K to actually doctorate level support of dance education. And it becomes a very smart and strategic way to couple resources to maximize and leverage the results for students. So the Arnhold new teacher supports, for example, will support a new dance teacher with mentoring, with funds for a partnership grant to bring in particular genre of dance education that a new teacher might not be familiar with. So it both bolsters their own content professional learning as well as the experiences for our students. Trenton and Larry spoke about the art space grants. Those funds could be used to retrofit or build a new dance studio so that our students have that dedicated space in which to learn. So that's really just an example of how the partnership can really work. And certainly, Chair Traeger, you spoke about your own investment in New Utrecht High School in the auditorium. And you know what? Absolutely. That's a really wonderful story and a really great snapshot of what together we can do to meet these goals, because your investment in New Utrecht High School is going to allow other Anthony Ramoses to come forth. All right, and not only the stars and not only the celebrities, because of course we want that for students who want to follow that path as well, but enabling each and every student to take for the rest of their lifetime an appreciation of the arts and of the skills that you so eloquently, Chair, mentioned as the contributions that arts education makes to our students around critical thinking, engaging students in academic achievement. We also work with our MLL and students with disabilities around, we have pilot projects. The arts partnership grants are specifically designated those resources to help schools develop programs and partnerships with our arts and cultural partners who are, again, outstanding in supporting the needs of MLL students or students with disabilities, and also family engagement grants, which we also think we want to involve our family. Nothing is a greater affirmation of a welcoming, inclusive environment that everybody in a school community belongs to than when parents and families can come to a school building and see their students perform, sing, dance, see their student artwork in an exhibit. It is truly joy, and joy is not a four-letter word, even though arts may be a four-letter word.
That's a really very powerful response and answer. And just to be clear, I taught in Utrecht, and the Anthony Ramos story inspired me to put in a big investment in John Dewey High School, where they're building a state-of-the-art Broadway-inspired theater auditorium that's in addition to a culinary arts center. And I think the story of Dewey needs to be shared more, because when I took office, Dewey was on the verge of closure. And I do want to acknowledge the partnership with DOE and my office and new leadership at Dewey. But the school, because of the investments in the arts, culinary arts, they have a beautiful culinary kitchen, a Broadway theater that's in the works, and other great projects, and the great staff. Their enrollment, it used to be 600 kids back in 2014. Their enrollment is now over 2,400 students. And that is with the investments in the arts, investments in our school communities. Dewey is thriving because we did not give up and we invested in our school. So it's a very powerful story to share. Can someone just, if they have data, does every public school in New York City have at least one licensed art teacher?
We are close. I don't think, Trenton, do you have the exact numbers there?
You're unmuted, Trenton, but I hear a little static coming.
I apologize. Can you
Oh,
hear
there
me
we go.
better now?
Yes, thank you.
The vast majority of our schools do have certified arts teachers. So looking here at the numbers, looks like about 25% of elementary schools do not have a certified arts teacher, 7% of middle schools, and 9% of high schools. So a total of 17% across the system, which is something we're continuing to work on. And I think we've seen huge growth over the last number of years, especially with the investment from this administration in arts education. And there's certainly more work to do with that.
And I will just say that I don't think, just from my vantage point, I don't think we can rely simply on fair student funding to get that done. Because as I mentioned before, fair student funding is tied to enrollment. And one of the first priorities is to, ensure that they keep the staff, which they have, especially the veteran experienced educators. And also, to be more blunt about it, the way the system is structured, one of the reasons why New Utrecht, where I used to teach, had a challenge keeping the theater program was because resources were not always provided. But New York State and the government kept asking about its Regents scores and Regents examinations. So things were tailored towards compliance in terms of where, I have a saying that my staff hears me say, if it's being measured, it's going to be invested in. I'll say that again. If it's being measured, it's going to be invested in. And so the arts, when New York State sends, what's called a Joint Intervention Task Force, or a JIT, it was called, or when the big shots came in from the city, there were not questions about the arts. You showed them that auditorium where Anthony Ramos's career was born. There was no, box to check on a principal's performance, checklist. They asked about, Regent scores, how many ninth graders moving to the 10th grade, and so forth. So if we really want to invest meaningfully in the arts and schools and in a sustainable fashion, we need to kind of measure it. We need to ensure that this is here for the long haul. And that's something that's a part of a conversation between the city and the state, quite frankly, because there needs to be a sustainable path of funding to ensure that we really care about the arts across all schools. Because with CASA, just to kind of give you further context, I know it very well because we've given CASAs in my districts, and I'm proud to report that all the schools in my district, particularly the hardest hit before the pandemic, everyone has a CASA. My elementary schools in Coney Island, but they limit how many kids can participate in the program due to the funding amount. So they can cap it to like 100, 150 kids. when more kids want to be a part of the program, and they're wildly popular programs. So I have always, and I thank my colleagues in the council who've always been supportive of CASA, but we need to have more than just CASA. We need to have a sustainable stream of funding dedicated to the hiring of licensed art educators, programs across the board. I want to get very quickly to, in addition to the arts, extracurricular activities. And I know that we've also been joined by Seth, who I have much respect for. Particularly, Seth has a history in Lincoln High School in Southern Brooklyn. I truly appreciate that. Seth, high school sports programs were shut down when schools closed, well, physical buildings, March 2020, but they resumed in April 2021. Are PSAL teams and programs back up and running with the full component of teams, or has there been a reduction in teams and sports offered?
Thank you, Chair Traeger, for that question, and thank you for your continued support of PSAL and interscholastic sports throughout the city. It's been amazing over the course of my time here to be able to work with you, the committee, our advocates, specifically our student advocates, on building robust interscholastic sports programming throughout the city. I am happy to say that at this point, all of our sports and all of our programs are active. We have brought a full array of students back to New York City, and we work extremely closely with the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene to ensure that our schools remain some of the safest places to be during the pandemic because of our multi-layered safety measures to bring sports back to our school community safely.
Yeah, I think.
Thank you, Seth, for that answer. Also, I think if someone is not unmuted, just because the answers are coming in a little bit fuzzy. Seth, we were able in the last budget to provide an allocation, a greater allocation towards PSAL with the goal of ensuring that every school, every community has access to PSAL program. I also want to say, for the record, we still have more work to do. I said it then, I'll say it again. I think we need even more money into PSAL, and if we really want to have true and lasting equity. But Seth, can you give us kind of just an update from where you see things from your end of the world about ensuring that every school has that opportunity, every kid from every zip code has opportunity to participate in PSAL programming?
Again, Chair Traeger, I would not be telling the full story if I didn't pause for a second and say thank you so much for that support in getting those resources and the work with those student advocates and advocates in this committee to make sure that we did have the resources and a plan that ensured every student enrolled in grades 9 through 12 General High School did have access and do have access to sports programming. The new budget is allowing us to add 200 teams, as well as introducing or scaling our all access program, which includes shared models where a number of small schools in close geographic proximity can come together to participate on one PSAL program, as well as individual access where a student can opt into playing on a team of their choice, even if their home school or program does not have that sport normally or traditionally available to them. This all access program, with the support of the resources just mentioned, will allow for every student not only to have access, and I think that this is a really important point, not only are we giving access to every student enrolled in those 9-12 high schools, but also robust access. So it's not just about saying we checked the box and got a team to them, but we're also creating innovative ways to make sure they have access to a robust offering of interscholastic sports. And we have started that work. We have started delivering those teams. We've started delivering new programs to those schools that historically have had limited to no access. And we're excited to scale up that work over the course of the next 3 years.
And Seth, if I heard you correctly, you mentioned that there are 200 new teams as a result of these resources. Is that correct?
over the next 3 years, we will offer 200 new teams.
And are these, and are we, these are for schools that previously, are we capturing the schools that previously did not have a PSAL program?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, and not just had no program, but had limited to access to programming. So we have a group of schools who did not have access that are now have all been contacted and either already have new teams and programs going or are in the process of getting their new teams, as well as focusing on a number of schools that have had programming but limited access to programming and increasing the number of teams that are being offered through new team allocation as well as shared access.
And Seth, and we're ensuring that these are, can you give me some examples of what kind of teams we're talking about, ensuring that these are also, they're girls teams, boys, can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question because we really revamped the way new team allocation happens. Historically, a new team application was conducted by school administration who felt that they wanted to bring a new team to their school community. And then based upon available resources that the PSAL teams were approved or denied. And usually the available resources could only approve approximately 10% of the annual funding available for new teams. What we've done now is we are using data-informed decisions to go out to the schools with the most limited access to sports teams. Focus on the schools that have historically had no or limited access. And we're saying to them, we want to give you new teams. What we ask is that you survey your students. Let the student voice what the interest of the students are in what teams should the school have, be the driving force behind what teams we offer. Once we have the data based upon the student surveys, we talk to school administration. We're focused on Title IX compliance, making sure that we have equitable distribution of teams for both our male and female team allocation, making sure that the team will adequately meet the needs of the school community and to the best of our ability, ensure high participation rates.
Well, I appreciate that answer, Seth. And also on the topic of Dewey High School, again, I go back to my district, but very proud. We have a very successful girls soccer group at Dewey called the Dragons, and they also showed me the conditions of their field, which was not in great shape. We put an allocation of $3 million for a brand new field for the Dewey Dragons to have a great soccer program and other great programs. But thank you, Seth, for that answer. And also, again, for the record, to my colleagues, now and in the next council, next administration, and I am not retiring. This is in my blood. We need more money for PSAL. We need more money for the arts and extracurriculars. This is a top priority for a variety of reasons. But I also think that if there's one connective tissue that connects, whether it's a sports program, the arts, extracurriculars, you name it, to hear our kids say, this is the program, this is what kept me in school. This is why I kept coming back to school. This is what saved me and was a turning point in my life. So I really hope for the day that we almost stop referring to them as extracurricular and just refer to them as the lifeblood of a school, that a school cannot function without these critical programs in place. That's how critical they are. Just a quick follow-up question to the panel, if any of my colleagues have questions afterwards. Question about, we know that extracurricular activities such as student government, student newspapers, cultural groups, student clubs are created, funded, and run by individual schools. Does the DOE track the number and type of extracurricular activities offered at schools?
We do not, Chair, track it centrally. As you know, that is driven by student interest that evolves and faculty capacity and availability. so that the schools themselves do, of course, carefully track it, and it's identified in the high school directory, et cetera, other admissions materials, but centrally, because of the ever evolving nature of those activities, currently we don't track them.
Yeah, and I would just respectfully add to that generally speaking, students are interested in these critical activities and programs.
Yes,
the issue has always been funding, and that's where, again, there's an equity concern question here, because there are certain schools that could raise $1 million through PTA fundraising, and there are many schools that cannot. And that will, because that leads to my next question. There are events and activities that are highly motivational for students, such as school trips, dances, talent shows, carnivals, competitions, which they compete in. And do you keep track of those types of offerings in schools, or you're saying no to that as well?
Centrally, we don't keep track. Centrally, we do support all of those, right? So whether that's through, say, an MSQI, which has been generously supported by the council, I'm a witness to that. Their debate activities have been tremendous and really need that continued support. Whether it's, and then when there are other debate activities as well, right? In the Civics for All office within our broader teaching and learning office, that pushes all of the extracurricular activities you're referring to. As far as overall tracking, central tracking, no, to answer your question, that doesn't happen centrally, but the support does.
Yeah, this, I'm trying to frame this carefully. Some might feel, well, Traeger, why does this matter? Why does a school trip matter? Why does a school club or a competition matter? It matters for a lot of reasons. Again, it reconnects kids to their school community. It builds a sense of community in their school. It adds to school culture, and it positively shapes school climate, which are all factors in keeping kids in school, increasing attendance rates, and improving academic, social, emotional outcomes. So it's all connected. It does matter. The issue is that not every school offers these opportunities. And I do think at DOE, at minimum, we should have a better sense of what's happening, because there's a real equity concern here. And I do think that we have a role to play in ensuring that these opportunities, because there are certain schools that could raise money in one night to send their kids to Europe for competitions, and there are certain schools that have to go to GoFundMe pages for basic things, and that does concern me. I have a question also about graduations and other types of celebrations. Graduation ceremonies and accompanying celebrations, such as proms, were canceled entirely in 2020 due to the pandemic. This was particularly this had a great impact for high school seniors who were unable to celebrate this once-in-a-lifetime milestone event with family and friends. New guidance was issued in April 2021, permitting graduations to resume effective May 1, 2021, with restrictions depending upon type of venue or capacity. Considering that many schools are already booking venues or trying to book venues already at this time for the spring, does DOE know how many schools held in-person ceremonies in 2021? Are you aware of any problems that arose from the guidelines? And where are schools at for next spring, if you have any information on that?
Throughout the pandemic, we've been committed to supporting schools and finding meaningful ways to celebrate their students. We absolutely want them to have their proms. We absolutely want them to have their graduations. We are not aware of issues that arose last year, but we, and as far as to your question about the exact number and nature of the different events, we can get you that information. The superintendents do have it, so we're happy to get back to you with that. And obviously, we want these and expect these events to happen in the spring. We're really excited about it. Yes, may need to continue with some of the mitigating efforts that we've put in place to make sure our extracurricular activities, our PSAL, our arts programs continue. Some of those may continue, but we want everyone back and celebrating appropriately, and that includes in-person proms and in-person graduations this spring. And to your point, sir, if I may go back, you mentioned Dewey and the success of Dewey. And to your point, right, what gets funded gets measured, and what gets measured gets funded. And we received quite a bit of guidance from the federal government around our funding and flexibility. And we did receive plenty of guidance about the importance of math intervention, academic intervention, English. But there was not a requirement to support the arts. So we created that, and we really need to thank Chancellor Porter for making sure that happened. And we need to continue telling the stories of Dewey, like the arts and sports programs. There are a big factor in the school turnaround. They really are. Thank you for mentioning it. Thank you for supporting it. And we need to keep telling that story. So thank you.
Oh, believe me, those who know me, I will keep telling the story from every format, every meeting, because I've seen it firsthand. We didn't have to reinvent the wheel. We just invested in a school and never gave up on the school. And again, it's not the extras. If I was to, those who follow me on social media, I sometimes share what students at Dewey are working on, even after school hours, baking, making gourmet meals. These are like 5-star restaurant quality creations happening where kids are choosing to stay in their school even after school finishes. They're choosing to do this because they've built a sense of community, and they're proud to showcase that work. And when the new theater comes up, as Anthony Ramos would explain to me, there's no other place he'd rather be than be on that stage rehearsing with his fellow peers. So we had kids engaged in meaningful programs, building a network and friendships. And Seth knows, and Seth's father knows, who's a coach at Lincoln as well, who we know, how many players turned to their coaches. It became like a father figure to them. And I was a high school teacher. Coaches would come to my class and say, how is this student doing? Let's make it, Traeger, if he's not doing his homework or she's not doing, they checked in on them. That's what we're talking about here. It's so much more than just, it needs to be the lifeblood of a school. That's the key part. And but I would say this, Mr. Prendergast, that I do think that it does make a difference when someone from DOE comes into a school and asks, well, let's talk about what program offerings we have. Because as you've pointed out, if it's not measured or discussed, it's rarely really invested in. And these are the types of these are questions that really typically don't happen. I have sat through a number of visits from the powers that be, so to speak. I've rarely, this is going back to my teaching days, this was before this current administration, but I would rarely hear questions about the arts being asked. It was mainly about compliance and so forth. So I think it's important to note that. And I also want to give a shout out and plug for Chancellor Porter, because I was saving this towards the closing of my hearing, but I'll say some remarks now that she took on this role during an impossible time. And she made a lot of choices to double down on investments and support for children, and is a believer in the public school system. And I want to repeat that again. She's a believer in public schools. That might sound like a simple statement, but we cannot underestimate the gravity of that statement, because we've had people historically have not always been believers in the public school system. And so I certainly want to acknowledge her service to the city, and she came from the bottom to the top, educator to become chancellor of our school system. We thank her immensely for her work, particularly in this moment that we're in, to kind of get schools the support which they need during this challenging time. And so I do want to publicly acknowledge and thank her for her service and to her team. With that, Malcolm, are there any members or colleagues that have any additional questions?
Well, we were joined by Council Members Dinowitz and Ampry Samuel, and there are no Zoom hands raised.
Okay, so we have a lot more work to do, folks. I think those who know me, as I mentioned in my opening statement, I'll give credit where it's due, but I am going to go I'll go very intense in terms of areas where we have to do better. And I want to thank the panel for their service. We have a lot more work to do on this front, and I will never stop pushing for more money to have a sustainable stream of funding to support these programs across every zip code in New York City. Thank you all for your service. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Now we are going to turn to the public portion of our program. I just want to remind everyone that you will be called on. A member of our staff will unmute you, and Zoom will prompt you to accept the unmute. Everyone will have 2 minutes to give the salient points of their testimony. We ask that testimony in full be emailed to testimony@council.nyc.gov, and we accept it for up to 72 hours after the close of this hearing. So for panel 1, we have Mario Azzaro, the New York City Art Teachers Association, Ellen McHugh, AHRC, Keith Kaminsky, BRIC, also New York City Arts and Education Roundtable, and Ava Kinsey, Brooklyn Academy of Arts, New York City Arts and Education Roundtable member. I'm going to first turn to Ava Kinsey, if we could go ahead and unmute her, because she has to step out in just a few moments.
Time starts now.
Good morning. Excuse me, I just lost my words. Good morning. New York is a home for artists, a home for students. An ecosystem of arts education has fed and nourished our students and our city. And I come before you today just to let you know that funding like ARPA funding continues to keep that ecosystem alive, continues to make sure that our young people are heard, seen, and felt in their classrooms by their teachers and also by vendors, teaching artists and arts educators who continue to sustain, support, and aid the work being done by classroom teachers. Again, I'm from the Brooklyn Academy of Music. And in 2020, the Brooklyn Academy of Music's education department was the anchor and the cornerstone of our institution. This was because, as we know, stages were hit hard at that time. And so several of our shows were postponed due to the pandemic. However, our education department was continued and was allowed to thrive because our young people continued to show up. And many of them stated that this type of virtual communication and connection helped them to have some type of normalcy during the pandemic. It centered them and made them feel seen, both in our in-school residencies and our after-school programs. And it continued to help them to process what it is that was happening during the pandemic. I come to you today to appeal to you to continue funding like ARPA for arts education. This ecosystem that I speak of starts in this room today, this Zoom room today. We can continue to fund and nurture programs like those at BAM and those that my colleagues are also representing. I thank you for your time, and I just want to continue to undergird that New York is a home for artists, and it starts in the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you, Ava. And next, we will turn to Mario Azzaro, the New York City Art Teachers Association, UFT.
Time starts now.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, good morning and thank you. My name is Mario Azzaro. I'm currently serve as the executive chair of the UFT's Art Education Professional Committee, the New York City Art Teachers Association. In 2020 and 21, we had two separate citywide student initiatives, Artists en Masse, that was co-sponsored with COPE NYC and the Brooklyn Borough President's Office. Eric Adams was our incoming mayor, as well as a an exhibitor for students' work called Inside Outsides, which allowed young artists to respond to the COVID pandemic through their art and writing. We saw over 300 art educators participate in our citywide survey of going back to school after the pandemic, and their concerns, fears, hopes, and challenges were shared and addressed both by Karen Rosner at the Office of Art and Special Projects, as well as the U of T. All of these initiatives can be found on our website, which is the nycata.com. Today, I want to talk about what is important. Funding is crucial for the arts, as for arts positions, for licensed teachers, and of course, classroom supplies. I thank our city leaders who are working to secure that and safeguard that such funds. But the point I'd like to make today is that the pandemic has made it clear that class size is also a public health issue. And it hasn't been since 1938 that the last time that the city actually set limits for class size in New York City. I'd like to, excuse me, I want to urge our city leaders and policymakers to support legislation that will have the greatest impact on classroom teachers. Teachers who are conspicuously absent from today's hearings because they're doing what I have done and we all have done for years, which is teaching. The issue is that always been class size and the frustration on how to reach and engage students and have engagement for over 30 plus students in a 30-minute block. So I am urging middle school, as a middle school art teacher myself for over 30 years, I would urge our city council to think about legislation which has always made the biggest difference. It hasn't been just our salaries and budgets and materials. It's been the frustration of having to deal with large groups of children who look to you to engage and to make their lives more meaningful and connect them to school. And it's almost impossible in today's day and age, as well as with the issues of health and safety, to do that on a large scale way. And I, as a teacher for over 30 years and a representative of the Art Teachers Association, I would say that class size is the one thing that would have made my job of 30 plus years in the New York City school systems the most important thing and the most effective way to connect to students and to have them engage. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And next, if we can go ahead and unmute Ellen McHugh, we'll turn to Ellen.
Time starts now.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about this. I want to give you my personal experience as the parent of an individual with a disability who participated in sports teams at telecommunication high schools. Without that social and emotional support, he would have been isolated in that building. He was one of only 3 children who had a hearing loss. And that made all the difference in his high school experience. It even allowed him to find a date, which as a mother, you sometimes worry about. But the issue is that he felt that he was part of a community. Continuing the funding for sports programs and expanding that funding would be a gift and a half, to put it mildly. But I would urge all of you who are there to make an extra effort to include those individuals who are not always included, children who are deaf, hard of hearing, blind, visually impaired, children with autism. The programs for those children are small, and I would urge you to look to include them. Including them, of course, would also mean that if this is an after-school program for many of these children, they need busing. So there are complications to this, but creating a social and emotional support, especially at this time, would certainly be a benefit in all cases for all children. And I appreciate the effort. Thank you very much.
And Ellen, I want to thank you for always being a voice for all of our kids. And it's been an honor, I mean it, an honor to work with you, and we'll continue to work together. And also just to note, for those who follow my social media, I occasionally post a picture of the amazing creations from the Dewey Culinary Kitchen. What I'll add here is that Dewey has what's called an ACES program, right, where children with IEPs are involved there. They are creating, and again, as a foodie, I'm a foodie. they are creating masterpieces, not just creations, they are masterpieces. And that's why, as a teacher, I feel this in my bones, that kids who have been labeled with special needs really have special talents that our system must work to bring out. And that's the task before us, Ellen. So thank you so much for your work and your advocacy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ellen. Next, for this panel, we will hear from Keith Kaminsky, BRIC, also New York City Arts and Education Roundtable. The following panel, just so people can get ready, will be Katie Koner, Lincoln Center Theater, Judith Insel, Bronx Arts Ensemble, Kimberly Olson, New York City Arts and Education Roundtable, and Linda Kennedy, Intrepid Sea, Air and Space Museum. We will now turn to Keith Kaminsky.
The time starts now.
Good morning, all, and thank you for this opportunity. I come to you today wearing a few different hats. I'm the Senior Director of Education and Family Programs at BRIC, a board member of the New York City Arts and Education Roundtable, and also a CUNY grad student completing a thesis project on the relationships between city agencies and arts and cultural nonprofits for arts education services in public schools. For over 20 years, it has been my sincere pleasure to work to help expand opportunities for learning in the arts for the city's students and families. When schools shut down back in March of 2020, we reached out to our school and community partners to see how we could be of service. In June, BRIC launched One Brooklyn TV, a project in collaboration with the DOE to broadcast 15 hours per week of educational content on our HD cable channel. This work continues, and to date, we've broadcast well over 800 hours of content for students and families. At the same time, we were notified by the DOE that all existing purchase orders for arts residencies would be halted for the remainder of the school year, and that the process of renewing our MTAC vendor contract would also be paused. This has caused significant loss of revenue we've been counting on, and our vendor contract has still yet to be finalized now over two years after submitting our proposal. Since this summer, we've also seen a significant slowdown in the process of DOE fingerprinting clearances for staff, which has been a serious issue. We understand that we're all continuing to navigate through difficult times, and that these challenges have had negative consequences not only for my organization, but also for the field at large. With the ARPA funding and the restoration of city budget cuts this year, now we're seeing increased demand for services. This means a lot more work for teaching artists, which is great because they experience many of the worst financial impacts of the pandemic. But it also means increased workloads for administrative staff and more pressure on our own fundraising efforts. The funds we receive from the DOE and DCLA for arts education programs require that we supplement with our own revenues in order to have adequate resources for successful program delivery. As a field, we are used to some degree of fluctuation.
Time expired.
I urge you to consider reinstating the practice of a dedicated line item in each school's budget, previously known as Project Arts. I also urge the DOE to prioritize funding for schools that do not have a certified arts teacher on staff or those without existing cultural partnerships. NYC is the center of arts and culture. We absolutely should not have public school students in our city who do not receive arts education. Thank you again, and I look forward to sharing the findings from my thesis research project in the near future.
Thank you. And I just want to remind council members that are still present in the Zoom to use the Zoom raise hand function. If you have questions for any of the panelists, we'll call on you after the conclusion of the panel. The next panel we are now going to go to, we will first hear from Katie Koner from Lincoln Center Theater.
Time starts now.
Hi, my name is Kati Kerner, and I'm the Director of Education at Lincoln Center Theater. Like Keith, I'm also a board member of the New York City Arts and Education Roundtable and a parent of an 8th grader in a New York City public middle school. I'd really like to thank Chair Traeger and the Education Committee for this opportunity to testify and for your strong support of arts education in our schools. I'd also like to thank Chancellor Porter and the Department of Education for their foresight in earmarking $70 million of federal ARPA dollars specifically for arts education. These critical resources are making it possible for organizations like Lincoln Center Theater to use the arts to address the ongoing academic and social emotional impact of the pandemic on the 4,800 young people in 35 middle and high schools whom Lincoln Center Theater will serve this year. As we all know, students in New York City schools are still processing so much loss while having to adjust to an ever-shifting series of new normals. as Suleiman, a student from Emma Lazarus High School who arrived in the United States from Guinea-Bissau 2.5 years ago, and who we worked with on a semester-long project to help Emma Lazarus fulfill an arts requirement for their students in spring 2021, told us, "Theater can help you deal with your anxiety, something that I'm still dealing with. The arts are a means for students like Suleiman to process difficult emotions, engage with their school communities, develop a sense of craft, and deepen their academic engagement." So like schools, theaters are doing everything to keep people safe. However, right now, the lack of a vaccination requirement in schools effectively bars students from accessing cultural institutions such as Lincoln Center Theater that require proof of vaccination for entry. The current DOE field trip guidance is unclear and inequitable, as not all students are able to access extracurricular field trips due to work or family commitments, or because it's simply dangerous for them to travel home after dark. A vaccination requirements for students would ensure
Time
that young
expired.
people can once again receive equitable access to live theater and integrate that experience into their academic learning. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kati. Apologize for mispronouncing your name. Next, we will turn to Judith Insel, the Bronx Arts Ensemble.
The time starts now.
Chair Traeger, honorable members of the City Council, thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Judith Insel, and I'm the Executive Director of the Bronx Arts Ensemble. As a cultural arts partner, Bronx Arts Ensemble provides contracted services to annually 40+ New York City Department of Education schools in the Bronx, presenting culturally responsive arts education in the 4 arts disciplines of music, dance, theater, visual arts, and upwards of 5,000 of primarily BIPOC students, and employing 60 to 80 primarily BIPOC professional teaching artists. Arts education is essential. During the height of the pandemic, BAE quickly modified its curriculum, making it possible to present students with more than 25 diverse course offerings online and in person. Unfortunately, it was at that point that arts education was deemed non-essential regarding funding, and school principals disengaged with BAE as an AIE vendor on a large level, which required BAE to terminate services to approximately 30 public school partners and furlough 80% of our teaching artist staff. With the introduction of the American Rescue Plan, ARPA Act, BAE has been able to return to our pre-pandemic services of 40+ Bronx schools, engaging with returning and new DOE partner schools. Bronx Arts Ensemble urgently asked the City Council to aid the DOE in maintaining the high level of the budgetary funds needed to engage the approximately 1 million public school students system-wide. As reported in a February 2019 study prepared by the Rice Kinder Institute for Urban Research, researchers found arts learning experiences benefit
Time
students
expired.
in terms of reductions in disciplinary infractions, increases in compassion for others, and improvements in writing achievement. Furthermore, arts education experiences improve school engagement and college aspirations. As our city continues to tackle the challenges of an ongoing pandemic, we know that our Bronx students are healing and learning to move forward with their lives through experiencing the rich support of social emotional learning through arts education. We also know that if there is to be a future of culturally diverse art making in New York City, we need to ensure that our most underserved populations of Black and Brown students have access to arts education. Please seriously consider the great need to continue the highest level of funding possible for our arts education programs. Again, thank you for allowing me to present my statement today.
Thank you, Judith. And next, we will turn to Kimberly Olson, New York City Arts and Education Roundtable.
The time starts now.
Great. Thank you, Chair Traeger and the Committee on Education for your leadership and commitment to arts education. A special thank you to also Maria, Trenton, and the entire Office of Arts and Special Projects who work tirelessly for our young people. My name is Kimberly Olson, and I'm the proud Executive Director of the New York City Arts and Education Roundtable, and also a teaching artist working at P396K in Brownsville. The Roundtable is a nonprofit service organization working to improve and advance arts education here in New York City schools and beyond. First and foremost, we wish to thank Chancellor Porter for her historic investment in standards-based arts education via the ARPA academic recovery. By prioritizing arts education, the DOE helps to ensure that our city's young people have the rigor, encouragement, and inspiration that they need to thrive and learn in today's classroom. Now, while we celebrate this as a step forward, we recognize that it's a temporary one. It's been 20 years since the No Child Left Behind Act defined the arts as a core academic subject, and 6 years since the Every Student Succeeds Act declared that the arts are a part of a well-rounded education. However, in this great city of New York, we've not yet defined how to sustain arts education for all students. After this school year, what's next? Underinvestment in arts education has been recurrent. Prior to COVID, 67% of principals noted that funding for the arts was generally insufficient, and 65% of New York City middle schoolers were not meeting the state requirements in arts learning by the end of their 8th grade year. And currently, there is no requirement that schools must spend that arts supplemental funding for fair student funding on the arts. It's only a recommendation. We seek City Council's help to make it possible for all students to receive an education that they need and deserve. To achieve universal access to arts education, we believe that the city must work with the DOE to reinstate required fundings for arts learning, similar to Project Arts, prioritize funding the Office of Arts and Special Projects strategic plan to set us on a path for closing the equity gap, increase accountability by mandating that the arts be part of every school's comprehensive education plan, and establish a policy to increase the hiring and availability of certified arts teachers. Every school deserves a certified arts teacher. Thank you so much for your time and consideration today and for hosting this hearing.
Thank you, Kimberly. And finally on this panel, we will hear from Linda Kennedy, Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum.
Your time starts now.
As the VP of Education and Evaluation at Intrepid and as a New York City public school parent, I want to thank you for the opportunity to submit this testimony. And let me also say how much the support of the Department of Education Office of Arts and Special Projects, the DCLA, and the City Council is appreciated. While we are not usually thought of as an institution that delivers arts instruction, Intrepid Museum's programs regularly integrate the arts. We see history, science, and art as interconnected for inspiring curiosity, wonder, and creative solutions to 21st century challenges. We see ourselves as part of the educational ecosystem in New York City for both in-school and out-of-school time programming. Like many others here, during COVID, we had launched virtual programs, including school-focused classes serving 13,000 students and teachers, and drop-in virtual family programs serving over 11,000 kids and parents who were hungry for things to do. We offered virtual CASA programs for 10 schools, delivered a free virtual summer program for girls exploring STEM and STEAM content and careers, and a virtual maker camp for students with developmental disabilities, including autism. We continued to offer our theater-based program, completely redesigning the 10-session research, writing, and performance residency to be delivered remotely. And we hosted the Department of Education's Discovery Days for families to visit the museum for free programs. This past summer, we offered training for summer rising staff on engaging students with content in our specialty areas. By last spring, like many others, we saw the impact of Zoom fatigue, stress, and general disconnection of students, particularly in areas of the city where students and their families were facing more intense COVID-related challenges and where schools already struggled with other issues. The advantage for students who live in New York City is the array of cultural organizations like Intrepid Museum that offer opportunities and resources. The challenge is an unevenness among those who know how to make use of these resources. The problem is often awareness. Not only is the much appreciated funding needed to support these programs, but a clear and explicit statement needs to be made to school leaders and families about how important it is to fold these cultural resources into learning experiences in order to address learning loss, to enliven and enrich the learning experience, and re-engage teachers and students with the joy of learning, no matter what the zip code. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Linda. And the next panel that we are going to call will be Edward Miller from Arts Connection, Lorraine Goodman, Broadway Bound Kids, Toby Boshak, Exploring the Arts, Inc., Kathy Hung, Young Audiences, New York, Katie Palmer, Together in Dance. And the panel after that will be Cheryl Warfield, Advance More Opera, Sarah Bukowski, Dance NYC, Richard Suto Leap Inc., Latasha Wright, BioBus Inc., and Kin Mai Ung, Generation Citizen New York. We will first turn to Edward Miller from Arts Connection.
Your time starts now.
Hi, my name is Edward Miller and I'm a program manager at Arts Connection. Since the start of the pandemic, Arts Connection has been working to deliver arts programming to New York City school children who have been traumatized by COVID-19 and the related chaos. I personally have seen during COVID that engaging students in projects that allow them to tell their own stories, participate in culturally relevant arts activities, and work in the arts on a differentiated basis has helped students deal with their trauma by giving them control over their narratives, allowing them to have agency, and providing them an environment that allows each individual to have success. I've had direct witnessing the healing power of the arts. In the winter of 2020, an Arts Connection remote family event at PS 68R allowed students and their families to gather together for a multidisciplinary arts experience in which everyone took part in a visual arts project by making a dancing stick. Then used that to participate in learning culturally specific dances from Jamaica, China, and India, and then reflected on the experience with the teaching artist. The families were engaged together in the activities. Students had many questions for the artists, and students were excited to see their peers. Also in that year, a remote residency in theater at MS 228K taught MLL students to improvise scenes online. And towards the end of the residency, they were able to meet in the classroom together in person to finish videos about what they dreamed of doing after the COVID crisis was over. In this case, shy students we had worked with and seen before the pandemic were not that way anymore. They were excited to work with each other. And once they got together in person, and the positive anticipation was a stress reliever and helped them cope with the pandemic. Federal, state, and city funding has been critical in delivering programs like these. There is no question in my mind that the pandemic has severely and negatively affected arts and cultural organizations across the city. It's felt like a wildfire.
Time expired.
With the financial help to struggling organizations, it might prove impossible to provide essential arts programming across the city without that funding. Thank you very much.
Sorry about that, had the wrong window up. Thank you, Edward. Next, we're going to hear from Lorraine Goodman, Broadway Bound Kids.
Time starts now.
Hi, oh, my script just disappeared. Hi, my name is Lorraine Goodman, and I'm the Executive Director at Broadway Bound Kids, a small nonprofit with the mission to inspire you through the performing arts, with a focus on enhancing social emotional learning, confidence, connection, mindfulness, and creativity. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. As you all know, the COVID-related shutdown caused widespread difficulties, especially for organizations like BBK that primarily provide in-person programming to underserved communities. When the schools closed, some were unable to quickly switch to virtual programming, forcing them to cancel our contracts. These cancellations were doubly challenging as many related expenses for props, costumes, stuff like that had already been paid for and could not be refunded. The greater loss, however, was within these vulnerable populations we serve. Students lost ground across competencies, yes, but arts and education programs help students learn across competencies by tackling many of the emotional issues that were brought on by this remote learning. Bringing BBK's programs back into schools once in-person classes resumed would have been impossible without funding from ARPA. We are now providing our programming in 9 new under-resourced schools, many of which have never previously had any kind of theater programming. Without ARPA, none of these schools would have access to these programs that aid students' recovery from these pandemic-related trauma. We have heard educators and school staff that BBK students leave classes feeling better than they did before, with greater ability to concentrate in their other classes. These are the impacts, are the best part of the ARPA funding, or APRA funding. There were challenges, especially in setting up payment processing, doing the fingerprinting, and more issues that were exacerbated by the shutdown. I'm going to submit some written testimony that'll explain that more in detail. And I want to thank you again for your time. You can check us out at Broadway Bound Kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine. And next, we're going to hear from Toby Boshak, Exploring the Arts, Inc.
The time starts now.
Hello, I'm Toby Boshak, Executive Director of Exploring the Arts and a New York City Public School parent, 3 times over. I'm happy to be here to speak with you today. First, I'd like to express our appreciation for the city's support of arts education. We're proud allies in the endeavor to ensure that all students have equitable access to high quality, sequential arts education and arts opportunities. We're delighted to work with OASP, the Roundtable, and our art and cultural partners in this endeavor. There's a wealth of documentation about the negative effects of the pandemic on students, teachers, and families, including learning loss and social, emotional, and mental health decay. Counteractively, there is substantial data proving that kids engaged in vibrant arts programs have markedly better academic and social emotional outcomes. Thanks to ARPA funding, ETA is receiving additional support for our in-school programming through DCLA. This year, we welcome 6 new schools to our roster of partner schools, helping them to create plans for developing, expanding, and refining their arts programming. College Point Collaborative in Queens North, High School for Contemporary Arts in the Bronx, and in Brooklyn, John Jay School for Law, McKinney Secondary School for the Arts, Williamsburg High School of Art and Technology, and the Young Women's Leadership School of Brooklyn. The additional funds are also helping us build the capacity of all our 37 partner schools in all 5 boroughs through classroom teacher, professional development opportunities, and peer learning community gatherings to share resources and practices. But we are facing a number of challenges. Field trip guidance ambiguity has thrown a wrench in schools' fall plans to take students to live performances in museums as part of their learning. The perception that guidance will continue to shift without clear understanding of when or why means it's also difficult to plan for the spring. Also, with little clarity around the high school admissions process or timeline, our critical work to support middle to high school pipelines, for example, for young musicians in the Bronx, a focal area of our work in partnerships with the Kennedy Center Turnaround Arts programs, it's difficult to collaboratively plan with our middle and high school leaders and families. And the issues with contracting and fingerprinting further complicates in-school residencies that we proudly fund as a vital component of our work to support partner schools' capacity building in the arts. For example, a hip hop dance residency at a middle school in Queens seems to be on indefinite hold for the moment. We appreciate your attention to these issues as well as we all work together to find creative solutions to help our community heal, rebuild, and thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, we will hear from Kathy Hung, Young Audiences, New York.
The time starts now.
My name is Kathy Hung. I am the Executive Director for Young Audience New York, a 70-year-old nonprofit organization in New York City and one of the oldest who dedicated its mission to arts education. Thank you for the opportunity to testify and for your support to arts education in our school. While we are trying to untangle the equity issue, I would like to say that arts education is the best equalizer for our children today, particularly for the vulnerable ones. During the lockdown, Yanni quickly pivoted everything to online learning, and as a school reopened to in-person learning, we were the first there to bring the arts to our students and to provide customized arts classes to support principals and classroom teachers in the constantly changing environment today. Yanni never closed the door of cultural learning with any of our school partners. Our more than 60 professional working artists travel to hard-to-reach neighborhoods in all 5 boroughs to enlighten students. And understandably, there are different priorities in the school, in the world with global pandemic today. But the indefinite delay on the procurement process has a tremendous impact on our financial situation. Currently, Yanni has 2 community school contracts and a couple of CASA, plus a grant from DCLA. It is almost $1 million in our earned revenue. In the previous fiscal year, we didn't see the first dollar of those funding until May. Most likely, it will be the same situation this year, which means that we will have 10 months of gap in our finance. Last year, we were able to make by because of the PPP loan. This year, we won't be able to survive with the same delay. I would like to ask the committee to help improving the streamline of the procurement process and to consider our children's mental health and their better and equitable future be one of your priorities
I'm
by
expired.
providing dedicated resources to our school principals and cultural partners like Yanni, and the policy to protect our working teaching artists. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we will hear from Katie Palmer, Together in Dance.
Your time starts now.
Hello, everybody. My name is Katie Palmer. I am the Executive Director of Together in Dance, a small creative movement and musical theater arts education not-for-profit operating in New York City for 21 years. Firstly, thank you all so much for your time today and for your service to our city. And congratulations to those of you who had held your seats for 8 years or possibly more. I hope you all enjoyed these last few weeks representing our incredible city and wish you luck on all your next endeavors. Like everyone else here, the pandemic hit Together in Dance really hard, but I want to take my 2 very short minutes to share 2 personal stories about the value and need for arts education and arts education funding. One of our schools on the border of Woodside and Elmhurst in Queens really went through it last year. Their beloved assistant principal passed away in the winter. Their long-term principal left, and many of the parents of the students are essential workers and under many stressors. Through this shifting and grieving and their budget being decimated and completely uncertain, Together in Dance was able to offer the only arts partnership of the year. Together in Dance provided a few weeks of movement, creativity, and laughter through Zoom, and the students lit up. They came to class eager to move and connect, turning the potential limitations of space and distance into a field of discovery and invention. Everyone could feel the lift in the students and the teachers, and Together in Dance was able to provide a bright spot in an otherwise very dim school year. And my second story is possible because of the ARPA funding that we've all been talking about. Because of that money, one of Together in Dance's former partner schools is able to reestablish programming this year. The elementary school located in Canarsie, Brooklyn, was a long-term partner and had stopped working with us several years ago due to a complete lack of funds. But with this influx of ARPA money, we can now provide 10 to 11 weeks of dance and musical theater programming to every student in every grade, K through 5. That was literally impossible for the previous 5 years, and now it is possible. This money is a game changer. This money is a game changer and a life changer. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And the next panel that we're going to hear from, Cheryl Warfield, Advance More Opera, Sarah Bukowski, Dance NYC, Richard Sotu, LEAP, Latasha Wright, BioBus, and Kin Mai Ong, Generation Citizen New York. Following them, we will hear from Ray Wilson, Laura Bazone, Kwame Brandt Pierce, Jillian Carucci, and Michelle Gall. We will first turn to Cheryl Warfield, Advance More Opera.
Time starts now.
Greetings. Thank you, Chair Traeger and the Committee on Education members for this opportunity to testify. I am Cheryl Warfield, a professional opera singer, a 20-year teaching artist, and a proud New Yorker. I run a small nonprofit that delivers educational and cultural programs for K-12 students throughout the 5 boroughs, especially in underserved communities. Arts learning builds stronger community ties, improves academic achievement, and provides the skills needed to thrive in life. The time is now for New York to make a positive impact on the emotional and intellectual well-being for future generations through the power of arts and culture in education by making the arts a vital part of the everyday school experience, ensuring arts education funding is adequate and equitable, expanding arts education collaboration, arts partnerships, and recruitment, including small nonprofits and BIPOC-led organizations. In April 2020, my organization pivoted quickly to virtual programming. By July 2020, we partnered with Summer in the City, a coalition of arts organizations, to provide 8 weeks and 19,000 hours of free virtual programming to over 1,000 New York City public school students. My program, Black Lives Matter, Songs for George, the Music of Protest, provided an emotional outlet for students where they wrote music and lyrics about themselves and explored their feelings about what was going on in their world. One student with disabilities wrote an original song about losing a beloved teacher to COVID-19. Another student wrote new lyrics to the song Lean on Me about coping with anxiety. It was a cathartic experience for all. Universal access to arts education is an issue of equity. Every student who attends a public school in New York City should have the opportunity to participate in quality arts education programs as part of their regular school day. I wish to thank Chancellor Porter and the Department of Education for their historic $70 million investment in arts learning and urge leaders to continue to support comparable funding in the future fiscal years. Our children deserve it and our future depends on it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And next we will hear from Sarah Bukowski, Dance NYC.
Time starts now.
Good morning. I'm Sarah Cecilia Bukowski, Research and Advocacy Assistant at Dance NYC. We're a service organization dedicated to the dance workforce in the city. We thank the Chancellor and DOE for their historic $70 million investment of ARPA funds toward arts learning. And with gratitude, we believe there are continued investments to be made in order for every student to reap the benefits of arts education. First, make the arts a core subject in New York City schools. New York is one of only 19 states that do not include the arts as a core subject, despite the fact that 91% of Americans believe that the arts are a vital part of a well-rounded education. Students are still recovering from the impacts of the pandemic, and arts education is key to this recovery process and beyond by supporting social and emotional well-being, communication, and critical thinking skills. Arts partnerships and after-school programs support students and their families to participate as engaged members of their communities, and New York City schools can lead the way by making the arts a core subject. Second, we ask to prioritize funding for the Office of Arts and Special Projects Strategic Arts Plan to secure equitable access to high-quality universal arts education. We know that gaps in student achievement run along racial and socioeconomic lines, and these are long-standing and have been exacerbated by the pandemic. Equity in education as a whole can't be achieved if quality arts education is only available to some students. So by championing equity in the planning and execution of universal arts education, the city sends a message that the arts are a viable pathway to success for all students, which supports the cultural diversity of the arts workforce and the economic health of the city's creative industry. And third, we ask to adequately and sustainably fund arts education services through DCLA and DYCD. Budget cuts have limited schools' capacity to deliver quality arts education and sustain partnerships with arts organizations. The ARPA funds helped increase access to arts education, and this level of funding must continue beyond relief measures and increase over time in order to ensure the long-term capacity for schools and arts organizations to provide robust and equitable arts education. We thank you for your consideration and commend your leadership in these ongoing efforts to support students, educators, and arts workers to make the arts an essential part of a well-rounded education. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And next we will hear from, I apologize if I mess up the name, Richard Suto from LEAP.
The time starts now.
Thanks. Good afternoon. I'm Richard Suto, and I'm the Executive Director of LEAP. Thank you to the members of the committee, the leadership of the DOE and OASP in particular, and to the Arts and Education Roundtable for making sure organizations like ours are represented here today. We know programs in the arts are extremely beneficial to children's learning and development, and the written briefing shared with the committee explained that beautifully, so I won't try to do better there. But I'm here to amplify the need for these programs for children in schools that have been historically under-resourced and who are now disproportionately impacted by the effects of the pandemic. And also to share how this period has affected partner organizations like mine and maybe reiterate some of those that spoke before me. LEAP's a nonprofit founded when arts education was practically non-existent in the city's poorest school communities. 40 years later, we provide arts programs that promote access and equity for students underserved in the arts in over 150 schools per year and reach about 20,000 students with these programs. And about $3 million in funding from the Department of Education, as well as funding from DYCD and lots of other private sources. In March 2020, LEAP was forced to suspend all school programs And we released over 300 staff, including hundreds of teaching artists and professionals that were dedicated to the youth we serve. At that time, the Department of Education abruptly ended arts partner programs, resulting in a loss of over $1 million in annual expected revenue, and delayed payments on outstanding invoices, which was really devastating to partners like LEAP. More importantly, thousands of students' hopes of appearing on stage or presenting their art projects to their families were shattered. Children were also immediately lost the very unique connections to their peers that were available in our programs, as well as the relationships to the talented and caring adults that work in our creative youth programs. LEAP responded with the development of our first remote programs, and these programs ended up reaching hundreds of children within weeks of the school closure and became the basis for our virtual art rooms that served many more enthusiastic children throughout the hybrid school year. We saw young people experience joy, hope, and a feeling of excitement for learning that was probably pretty hard to generate in online learning. However, the reduction of funding from the DOE during that school year meant we were only able to fund fully a small fraction of the in-school programs we've provided in the past. This year in the fall, we were thrilled with the program opportunities that were offered by the OASP partner grants, and children responded with so much enthusiasm and some really amazing artwork. And we have the hope that that level of funding will continue in the coming school year. In fact, it must. I asked the committee to support increases in DOE funding for arts programs with an emphasis on grants and funding that allow the school and partners to plan the most relevant and responsive experience for the students, so that grants and funding for these programs may not be so specifically regimented that they could actually open up opportunities for schools and partners to work on culturally responsive and timely responsive ways of learning. We also asked the committee to consider two other factors that we might work with partners to identify creative solutions to address the personnel-related challenges we're all facing. We think that it's possible that partner organizations and the Department of Education, maybe other institutions throughout the city, could work together to address arts-related staffing needs. And also that the committee proposed to the DOE to review contract terms and payment processes under which partner organizations like ours are compensated to consider making them more timely and more partner-friendly. So I thank everyone who's here. I thank the dedication of the committee to these issues. And I thank you all for the opportunity for me and my organization to share some of our perspective.
Thank you. And next we'll hear from Latasha Wright, BioBus.
Time starts now.
Thank you for the opportunity to present. My name is Latasha Wright. I'm the Chief Scientific Officer of BioBus. So BioBus is a science outreach organization that specializes in hands-on inquiry-based exploration using arts as a way to connect science to the students' everyday life. So in March 2020, we needed to move all of our programs online. So we understood that the communities that we needed us more than ever. So to do this, we deconstructed our laboratories and brought them into every scientist got a microscope in their own home. And so instead of having a mobile lab school visits, we provided virtual field trips with scientists joining classrooms by video conference. And the class kept the key BioBus components of student-driven exploration, even virtually, with students telling the scientists when to zoom in and out and what to focus on in the microscopes. And we routinely included follow-up art projects for the students to continue their learning. So through constant feedback with parents and students, we learned what they needed through what they wanted to know. So definitely one of the things that people really wanted to know was about COVID. So we formed these YouTube live events where scientists could come and students could ask questions, and more than 2,000 people attended those YouTube live events. And then we also recruited Regeneron scientists to come in and talk about the monoclonal antibodies. And then over 1,000 people came to those events as well. So BioBus continued to promote science and hands-on inquiry by producing 3-minute STEAM challenge videos with the corresponding worksheets and activities so students could get away from the screen and do hands-on science from the safety of their own homes.
Time expired.
So we wanted to thank you so much, and we are continually to stay in touch with our communities, and we want to make sure that science and art is continued to be funded. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And next, we're going to hear from Kin Mai Ong, Generation Citizen New York.
The time starts now.
Thanks so much, Chair Traeger and the committee for allowing me to testify today. I'm Kim Mayong, the Executive Director at Generation Citizen New York, and I'm also a New York City public school parent of 3. Generation Citizen is really thankful for the City Council's $500,000 investment in our programming and youth civic education through the Civic Education in City Schools initiative. When faced with pandemic-related disruptions starting in spring 2020, Generation Citizen nimbly shifted to remotely supporting teachers in implementing our programming. We use Google Classroom to allow teachers access to our curricular resources, coordinated video calls for students to interact with virtual guest speakers, and provided frequent structured coaching to help teachers compile class-specific research and civic resources. We also created online resources for educators as well as caregivers to engage young people through our entirely online Kickstart Action Civics program, which is still available in English and Spanish. In the disrupted 2020-21 school year, our programming provided students with a really critical chance to connect and collaborate, although many were either entirely unable to meet in person or could only meet in person intermittently. And classes advocated on a variety of relevant social issues. These included curricular concerns like the need for more engaging science curricula, school conditions like the lack of outdoor space and gym use, school cell phone policies, and broader community issues like police relations, homophobia, and bullying in schools, and the need for expanded extracurriculars. Some classes focused on COVID-specific themes like racism amplified by pandemic disruptions, as well as mental health issues, anxiety, depression, and drug abuse in our communities. And so it was just so gratifying to see that in this disrupted time,
Expired.
allowed folks to connect together. Thank you so much to the City Council for this opportunity.
Thank you. And next, we're going to turn to Ray Wilson.
The time starts now.
One of the smartest things they did this year was to bring you back, Miss Ray. This comment was made by a 4th grader. In February of 2020, I began working as a teaching artist at PS 295, courtesy of Brooklyn Arts Council. When schools closed in March, the students used instructional videos and parents were able to attend our performance online. When I reunited with these kids in April 2021, I knew the regular PE teacher had left at the end of the school year. Their new teacher had quit halfway through the semester, and they had a sub that was new on the job. These students were grateful for familiarity and stability, but they also understood that our brief time together in dance class meant an opportunity for self-expression and self-exploration. First graders at PS 164, ESL students, many of which who already felt self-conscious about their English language skills, found a new form of freedom in taking diverse children's books and bringing them to life by acting them out. Theater helped these students play the part of confident English speakers. Online and in person, shy students use the arts to communicate, and those with anger issues use the arts for healing and hope. I've watched a 5th grader dismiss getting suspended for fighting. He didn't care about that. He was upset that he was going to this dance class and that he had broken his promise to me as a teacher. The arts can and should be inclusive. Some students would never get the thrill of seeing a Broadway show without a field trip to a theater. The arts industry makes up a substantial part of New York City's economy. New York City is a leader in the arts from fashion, film, painting, theater, and music. It only makes sense that New York City DOE continues to financially support the arts, as this is a reinvestment in creating the artists of tomorrow. Thank you for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you. And also for the record, we just want to acknowledge we were joined by Council Members Salamanca and Councilmember Grodenchik. Next, we're going to turn to Laura Bazone.
Time starts now.
Thank you so much for this time. I am the Performing Arts Program Manager at New York Edge, which is an after-school nonprofit organization serving over 40,000 New York City public school students in mostly underinvested communities. When we went remote back in March 2020, we also transitioned all our art classes to an online platform. In one of our middle school dance classes, students learned pop culture dances as well as dances from various generations. Each class ended in a really big dance party, and it was a great way to connect and feel moments of joy, as well as for students to feel a physical release at a time when they were confined to their homes. We had one student named Sky who signed on to our dance class every single day, and I watched her express herself so fully and freely. After the first week of our dance class, the director from her school at MS57K emailed me the following, and I quote, "Hi, I wanted to reach out and share my appreciation for putting together the e-learning for our students. I know we are all struggling to get students online and attending, and that there are a million reasons why it is difficult for many. But I wanted to share a small indication of the impact these art classes can have. Our student Sky has attended every single dance class with Ms. Brittany this week, and this is after she lost her mother to COVID-19 last Friday. These classes have served as a source of comfort for her and really highlights the impact we can have at a time like this." End quote. Sky continued to join every virtual dance class we had that month. And although she never expressed what she was going through in words, she expressed what she needed to by dancing and knowing that she had a space and in a community which gave her comfort during a horrific time. This is just one example of how life-saving an arts class can be, and yet we continue to have to advocate for them in schools and in after-school programs. As students like Sky are processing the trauma of the pandemic, arts programs are essential because they provide students a space to express complicated feelings, to build self-management skills, to practice decision-making, and to find comfort in relationships and in community. Thank you again so much for this space.
Thank you. And next we'll hear from Kwame Brandt Pierce.
The time starts now.
Okay. There I am. Okay. Hi, my name is Kwame Brandt Pierce, and I'm the after-school program manager at Brooklyn Children's Museum in Crown Heights. I currently manage a K-5 program for the museum at PS 189 in Brownsville. And this city-funded program serves about 250 children annually and is offered entirely free of charge. Our educators provide arts, science, and academic enhancement through activities such as animation, creative writing, and engineering. We also provide social emotional learning programs, teaching children effective ways to communicate, resolve conflict, and deal with frustrating or fearful emotions. This work has always been important to our community, but never more so than during the pandemic. In the summer of 2020, when many programs were closed, Brooklyn Children's Museum ran a full-day in-person summer camp from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. The museum also offered a remote and in-person after-school program at PS 189 during the school year of 2020 to 2021, as most parents were returning to work. This program is essential to our families. Most of our parents can't afford safe and reliable childcare, and the 2:30 p.m. school dismissal time makes it difficult for them to consistently pick up their children while also holding down a full-time job. Demand for our program at PS 189 has always been high, and we currently have a waiting list of over 200 children for the present school year. This past summer, BCM operated a free summer camp at PS 189 as part of Summer Rising. While the city funded us for 77 camp slots, more than 400 families submitted applications to the program. In an effort to serve as many children as possible, BCM expanded its program to 102 students with good faith assurances from the city that they would be compensated for additional staff and materials. To date, however, the city has not made good on their promise to compensate us for this work. It is imperative that organizations like BCM that provide essential services for families be paid for their work in a timely manner so that we can continue to serve as many children as possible with high quality arts, culture, and science programs. I also just want to take this moment to thank City Council member Alika Ampry-Samuel and Farrell Lewis for their support of programs at our museum, and Council members Mark Traeger and Brad Lander for their support of BCM's work as part of the Brooklyn delegation. That concludes my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Kwame. Next, we're going to hear from Jillian Carucci.
Your time starts now.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for your service to the field and for the opportunity to speak today. I am the Associate Artistic Director of TheaterWorks USA, where we envision a world in which theater gives rising generations a reason to look up and explore themselves and their communities with optimism and hope. Since 1961, TheaterWorks has addressed the disproportionate accessibility of art for young people. Through the pandemic, we've pivoted to offer more than 100 virtual theater courses to students across New York City and beyond. In the summer of 21, we had the opportunity to bring in-person programs to New York City schools and camps through our partnership with New York Edge. We received more than 20 program requests. After nearly 18 months of remote learning and Zoom fatigue, we were excited to expand and engage so many students in person, especially as they process the trauma of the pandemic. As noted by my colleagues today, evidence-based research shows the impact of arts education on students' social, emotional well-being and mental health. And now more than ever, continued and expanded arts funding is vital for our students' healing. Unfortunately, due to contract delays and a bottleneck of fingerprinting availability at DOE, several of our summer programs were unable to run on time or at all, and we were not able to reach as many students as we were prepared to serve. Additionally, many of our teaching artists affected by these delays were unable to obtain clearance on time and thus lost those wages. The teaching artist community is among the most affected by the pandemic, and the instability of this clearance process further contributed to their delayed return to work and ongoing financial hardship. Resolving these onboarding challenges is vital for TheaterWorks to provide access to quality arts education to as many New York City students as possible, and to provide reliable work for our community of arts education professionals. We understand the city is still in crisis and are eager to work together to move forward. I'll leave off with a quote from a third grade student in one of our classes. "I'm usually really shy, and since I learned about these strong, brave characters, I think I can be strong and brave in real life, just like them. Now more than ever, the arts can help our students heal and look to the future with hope once again." Thank you.
Thank you, Jillian. And next we will turn to Michelle Gall.
Your time starts now.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you so much for having us and Digital Girl Inc. and allowing us this platform to share our story on how the pandemic has impacted Digital Girl Inc. Digital Girl Inc. is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to empowering inner city youth, particularly girls, to pursue careers and studies in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Last month, we happily celebrated our 7th anniversary. In January 2020, DGI had in place after school or summer school enrichment programs with 15 schools or community-based organizations. As quickly as the pandemic put the world on pause, Digital Girl Inc. shifted programming online and created the DGI Virtual Hangout. It was important to us that we continue to provide programming, create some sense of normalcy for our students, continue to offer employment for our staff of over 13, and provide internship opportunities for the 8 interns we had working with us, and also to continue to be a resource for overextended parents, many of whom were working from home and managing students too. We were successful in offering consistent classes in game design, digital marketing, and web design, introduction to computer science, app design, digital responsibility, and census awareness and support virtually 5 days a week. Additionally, we provided Chromebooks for children, as some had received iPads from the Department of Education to complete online study, yet the software necessary for some classes was not compatible with iPads or tablets. Over the last 20 months, DGI has pushed through COVID-19 sickness, pregnancy through a pandemic, participant disconnection due to Zoom fatigue and mental and emotional overwhelm, staffing challenges stemming from reasons including the mass exodus and resistance from COVID-19 vaccine mandates.
Time expired.
And of course, loss of funding due to the shutdown. Without the funding received from the City Council, specifically the Committee on Education members, Barron, Ampry Samuel, Lewis, Carnegie Jr., and the Digital Inclusion and Literacy Initiative, our fight would be exceptionally harder. This report allows us to continue to be the resource New York City communities need and the reason we were created in the first place. Parents have told us that our programming and technical support helped to get them through the pandemic, and students as well. Thank you so much again for helping us to provide an educational distraction from the overwhelmingly scary world our young people had to endure through, and we implore you to continue that support. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. There have been many people who have come in and out of the Zoom today. So if you have not testified yet, if you could please use the raise hand Zoom function, and we will call on you in the order with which you raise your hand. Okay, if we can go ahead and please unmute Trisha Patrick. Trisha, you should be unmuted now.
Hello, and thank you.
I'm
Sorry, I need to put myself on video. Hi, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Good morning, and thank you. This year, MCC Education, we were fortunate to continue to offer our arts programs to all 4 of our partner schools. At one of our partner schools, we were invited to create curriculum and lead activities for several welcome back days at the start of the school year. We were able to work with each of the high school grades, a first for us. This in turn led to higher program enrollment during this year and increased teacher engagement because they were more familiar with who we are and got a taste of the kind of work that we do. Consistent funding of programs continues to be an issue with all of our partner schools. In a survey that I sent out earlier in the school year, teachers still cited funding as a major barrier to participating in extracurricular activities such as school field trips and engaging in arts partnerships. This year with ARPA funds, I witnessed a teacher delight in the fact that he could now pursue multiple options and programs for each of the grades in his school. It was like watching a kid in a candy store. Then the reality sets in that this funding appears to be granted for this year only, and that schools will not be able to make long-term investments in arts partners and programs that could span multiple years of recovery that we all know will be necessary. Because of the ARPA funds, we were able to schedule not just programs that our schools could afford, but fund a program that fully met the needs and the desires of the teachers and students. It is vital that access to funding is consistent and accessible to all the schools that need it. Thank you to the school chancellor and the DOE for the investment of the federal stimulus funds to the arts programs. An investment in arts education is an investment in our students and in the arts in our city as a whole. It is my greatest wish that this investment not only continues, but it grows. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Tricia. And next we will turn to Jamie Hastings, the Arthur Miller Foundation.
Time starts now.
Thank you so much. I'm the executive director of the Arthur Miller Foundation. We are a nonprofit organization that honors the legacy of the great playwright Arthur Miller and his New York City public school education in both Harlem and in Brooklyn. Our organization was founded by Arthur's daughter, writer and filmmaker Rebecca Miller. And on behalf of Rebecca and AMF, we'd like to convey our sincere appreciation to Chair Traeger and the City Council for the value you place on arts education as a core educational experience for our 1.1 million New York City public school students. We are providing 50% scholarships to the City College of New York's graduate program in educational theater for educators committed to receiving their theater certification with the goal of teaching theater in the DOE full-time in an effort to increase and diversify the pipeline of theater educators. We're also very proud that 78 New York City DOE theater teachers are part of the Arthur Miller Foundation Fellows Program in partnership with the Office of Arts and Special Projects, with whom we have been in partnership for 7 years. So over the last 6 years, the Arthur Miller Foundation has contributed approximately $1.5 million to our theater education program. Program participants, theater teachers named Arthur Miller Fellows, receive over $30,000 in dedicated support to build sustainable theater programs at their schools at the elementary, middle, and high school levels through professional mentorship, cultural partner residencies, teaching resources, classroom materials, Broadway tickets for students when theater is live, and ongoing professional development. The program is now impacting nearly 40,000 public school students across all 5 boroughs of New York City. Our fellows are extraordinary as they belong to 1 in about 20% of DOE schools with a certified theater teacher.
We hope that our fellows will see no change in their employment status for the current years and the coming years. And I am here to request that any budget cuts we face
Time expired.
the theater teachers in our public schools. We believe it's time to deem arts education an essential component of a core academic education for our youth. And we recognize that because of the pandemic, our students received such help throughout their remote learning experiences. Thank you for recognizing that arts education is a right, not a privilege. We are here to work together as a community, but can only do that if we ensure that the Office of Arts and Special Projects and arts education infrastructure is not lost. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. And seeing no further hands, Chair, after 3 years being your counsel, this is the last, we conclude the last hearing for this session.
Thank you, Malcolm, and thank you all for your very informative, powerful, substantive testimony here today. And I think it's very fitting that we're closing out this hearing session on a topic that really centers on connection with our kids, connection to students, and ensuring that they have every opportunity to succeed, grow, bring out their talents, and to kind of reconnect them meaningfully to their school community in the face of so much uncertainty and challenges with this pandemic. There was a lot that we wanted to continue to kind of delve into prior to the pandemic, but we had to tackle this challenge head on. And when folks ask me about the challenges that our school system faces, and there's a plethora of challenges, but we must, remember that we're here for the children. My principal, who I used to work in a school, always said, "Mark, it's about the kids." And so with all the uncertainty, with all the challenges, we need to go back to that central premise. It's about the children and what's best for them. And right now, we need to move heaven and earth to meaningfully reconnect our children to a school system that did not to go back to the way things were prior to the pandemic, because things were not equitable and things were not truly fair and just for many of our kids. But to really now use this opportunity with the unprecedented amount of resources from Washington, from Albany, and we have to push for more and sustain, to really build a school system that is worthy of our kids, where we center their needs, their talents, their abilities. And you must have the arts in that conversation, and all these programs that we're hearing about, the arts, extracurriculars, clubs, athletics, they have to be kind of woven into the daily, day-to-day function of a school. And that's the challenge and task before us. So I want to thank everyone that testified today. We are receipt of your testimony. Folks can still email us. I want to take this opportunity to also, as I mentioned before, to thank the incredible City Council staff, my staff, Anna Scaife, extraordinary Chief of Staff, I'm very grateful. Vanessa Ogle, my Policy Director, thank you for your great service. Maria Henderson, Janine, everyone who helped out, and the extraordinary team of the City Council, Central Staff. Malcolm, Jan, everyone, Chelsea, Massis, I'm gonna get in trouble now. The entire family, that again, this committee would not be anything without the incredible work of the staff that works day and night to make things happen. I want to thank you all. And as those even know me, I always say there's a lot more work to do. I'm not giving up on this. We have a lot more work to do. And we will continue to hold the DOE accountable to the best of our ability, and regardless of whatever capacity that we're in, to ensure that our kids get the very best, which they rightfully deserve. It's been an honor, privilege, but there's more Traeger to come, and appreciate you all. Thank you so much.